I need everybody in that hallway to be aware of it and get back. We need to pop this and see if we get any type of response from this guy.
Breach.
We have one suspect down inside the room.
Do you have an emergency?
We're at the Route 91 Festival Press Lounge, and there's a big shooting.
The whole concert's down on the ground.
And your friend has been shot?
Oh my god.
Today's mass shooting in Las Vegas looks to be the deadliest in modern US history.
Claiming 58 lives and leaving hundreds injured.
Stephen Paddock had no known criminal record. His brother at a loss to explain what he'd done.
We have no reason, rhyme, rationale, excuse. There's just nothing.
Detectives found a bottle of prescription Valium in Paddock's hotel room.
Time is ticking, fading fast. Heartbeat steady, hope it lasts. No erasing what's been done. Hard to tell once it's begun. Tick tock, 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 tick tock.
Vivemos num mundo cada vez mais perigoso, onde a violência aleatória e sem sentido se tornou um facto da vida.
It's not just at schools, it's in theaters, it's on the road. You know, incidents of road rage or child abuse or spousal abuse or just stranger abuse.
You get on a plane, you go to a movie theater, and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Violence and mass shootings have increased on a scale that we've never seen before.
A nível mundial, cerca de 500 mil de pessoas são assassinadas todos os anos. Os tiroteios em escolas estão desenfreados, com mais crianças e professores americanos alvejados em 2024 do que houve dias de escola. E nos últimos 50 anos, não só o número de assassínios em massa tem estado a subir vertiginosamente, como também o número de mortes. E isso sem mencionar a carnificina global anual de quase 3/4 de 1 milhão de pessoas que se matam a si próprias.
The question we have to ask ourselves is, what has changed? Why are these kinds of violent episodes so much more prevalent?
People keep looking around for how to explain the inexplicable of, somebody that nobody thought would do it goes and kills a bunch of people or kills himself and their family.
E as razões apresentadas são muitas e variadas.
Are kids who play violent video games more likely to be aggressive?
We have so much violence on television now.
Violent media are part of our everyday life.
The second major cause is, in fact, these guns.
They were asking these same questions about comic books.
Mas raramente mencionados são dois fatores-chave. Um grande número dos responsáveis estavam sob tratamento psiquiátrico e estavam a tomar ou a retirar-se de drogas psiquiátricas. E estas drogas estão a ser amplamente distribuídas. 250 milhões de prescrições só nos Estados Unidos.
We're in the midst of a massive drugging of the population, and we are actually suffering from all of the effects of that in the suicides and violence. And people keep looking for the solution in other places than in the obvious thing that's right in front of us, which is the massive drugging.
I've represented hundreds of clients who were fine prior to taking one of these antidepressants or antipsychotics. And then once they started on these medications, they became violent.
The side effects that I have taken them to court over are suicide, murder, psychosis, people hearing voices, people seeing things that aren't there, people going absolutely nuts and killing other people and or themselves. That's pretty serious.
It's not that it's happening because somebody didn't get mental health treatment. It's because they did get it.
I had periods where I could become violent The longer the drugging went on and the more medication that was added, the worse it got.
And here's my son, who's a lot bigger than I am, in my face, yelling and screaming, threatening to punch me in the head. And I'm like, where's this coming from?
I mean, God, I hate to even say that we ever locked our door because we were afraid of our son. Because that's not who he was.
It was a drug-induced psychosis. She had a psychotic break.
I was running around naked with a shotgun, declaring myself to be the second coming of Christ. I mean, that's what that drug did.
And for what happened that day, I still got 2 small children out there. That was their mother. I live with that every single day. And I think if I had not taken that medication, I would not be in this prison.
Ao contrário do passado, onde só criminosos e psicóticos cometiam atos de violência repentinos e aleatórios, hoje em dia a violência está a ser cometida por pessoas comuns. Irmãos, pais, amigos, vizinhos, até mesmo estranhos totais, inconscientemente levados a isso por uma droga psiquiátrica. E os crimes horríveis preenchem as ondas hertzianas.
The calls came in to 911 starting 9:30 last night.
10 minutes of terror when 22-year-old suspect Elliot Roger opened fire.
7 people were dead, including the gunman.
Roger's family says he'd been receiving mental health treatment.
8 people are dead and several others wounded after a gunman stormed into a North Carolina nursing home and opened fire. The suspect, Robert Stewart, was shot before he was taken into custody.
Breaking news out of Sutherland Springs, Texas, a shooting taking place at the First Baptist Church there.
More than 24 people were killed.
There is little doubt the gunman came to the church to kill everyone in that building, period.
Os efeitos secundários violentos das drogas psiquiátricas não são secretos para os psiquiatras. Por lei, estes estão listados em cada bula.
This is from the Zoloft package insert.
This is the package insert for Pamelor.
So this is the package insert for Celexa.
I'm reading from the Fetsema package insert, and it's got a black box warning for suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Patients, their families, and their caregivers should be encouraged to be alert to the emergence of anxiety, agitation, panic attacks,
insomnia, irritability,
hostility,
homicidal ideation, aggression,
psychomotor restlessness, hypomania and mania,
hallucinations, disorientation, delusions, anxiety, restlessness, agitation, insomnia, panic, nightmares, hypomania, exacerbation of psychosis.
These are a recipe for violence. They're either somebody's going to want to kill themselves to stop this, or they kill other people.
As agências reguladoras de drogas por todo o mundo estão muito conscientes disto. Elas emitiram 100 avisos citando comportamentos suicidas e violentos como efeitos de drogas psiquiátricas. Mas isso não impede os psiquiatras de pegar nos seus blocos de receitas, vez após vez, como eles prontamente admitiram numa conferência psiquiátrica recente.
How often do you prescribe psychiatric medication?
Every day.
And how many prescriptions a day would you do, maybe?
Maybe 30.
I prescribe medications about half the time.
Psychopharmacology is a big part of the practice of psychiatry, I think.
And how often do you prescribe medication?
I would say with some frequency. It's like 95%.
Every day, all day.
Almost all my patients were on psychiatric medications when I had a full-time private practice. Right now I'm treating animals.
A perigosidade das drogas que os psiquiatras prescrevem foi provada na literatura médica. Num estudo de todos os medicamentos prescritos desproporcionalmente ligados à violência, 77% deles eram drogas psiquiátricas. De facto, psicotrópicos de marcas como Prozac, Paroxetina e Zoloft aumentam as taxas de violência por ordens de magnitude. Esta é uma história de danos e destruição, corrupção e ganância. Uma história de pessoas levadas a prejudicar-se a si mesmas e aos outros. E porquê? Entre os muitos efeitos secundários graves listados nas suas bulas, as drogas psiquiátricas prescritas podem causar colapsos psicóticos, acabando em assassínio.
The most lethal sniper in U.S. history was gunned down at a Texas shooting range over the weekend. The man arrested a troubled former Marine whom Kyle was trying to help.
The VA told us, "We are proud of our mental health program, but their former patient, Eddie Ray Routh, killed 2 people right after he got out."
It wasn't a want to or anything. It was a need. I had to.
The UT student stabbed 4 people in broad daylight.
Just wasn't himself. You asked him a question and the answer was just erratic.
When an officer spoke to White, he said he took 2 happy pills, which were listed as Zoloft.
Megan Bigelow was on her way to a dentist appointment with her 3 kids when police say 23-year-old Jeremy Webster chased them to this Westminster, Colorado office complex, allegedly shooting Megan, 2 of her sons, and a bystander.
Webster claims he has mental health issues and just changed his medication yesterday.
The problem is that you can't tell who's going to go off, right? Because only a small percentage of people on these drugs are going to go off, but you don't know which ones.
When you go out on the road, 1 in 4 people are on a psychiatric drug. So all those, there are ticking time bombs out there.
Uma característica das pessoas a tomar psicotrópicos é um estado de espírito induzido por drogas chamado despersonalização. Esta sensação de dissociação extrema, desapego e irrealidade muda literalmente uma personalidade.
A lot of people have a completely flat affect. There's a flattening of all of their emotions.
These medications can lead to isolation, numbness, and a lack of awareness, which can ultimately result in violence.
They can't feel, There's no empathy.
And so you see these insanely violent activities. And when you talk to them about why they did it after they've gotten clean from the drug, they talk about how they were like watching a movie. They had no control.
New video today from the moments after 4 UT students were stabbed on campus last Monday.
This footage from a man who actually chased the suspect.
He didn't have a facial expression, like he was emotionless. He was just blank, and that bugged me a lot.
O discernimento reduzido causado pelos psicotrópicos muitas vezes remove a inibição de magoar os outros, não apenas com armas, mas com o que estiver à mão.
The means isn't what's important. That what's important is that people are doing violent behaviors that they wouldn't otherwise do.
There's no question that there's people right now who are in jail after committing violent crimes who never would have done that if they hadn't taken these drugs. And there's no question that people right now are dead because of these drugs.
Ninguém sabe isto melhor do que Dale Bagshaw, na prisão por crime que ele cometeu depois de ficar inconsciente devido a psicotrópicos.
My name is Edward Dale Bagshaw. I'm from Jeffersonville, Indiana. It's right across the bridge from Louisville, Kentucky. It was Christmas time, and my wife, she took my children, and left. And there was still Christmas tree up, presents and all that, so I really got depressed. The psychiatrist just talked to me about how I was feeling, and talked to me, we're going to put you on this medication. And I never heard of Cymbalta before. I didn't know what it was. He goes, well, hold on. He left the room and he came back with a bag, and it was full of samples. And he said, I want you to take this. It was always in a brown bag. And I'd get the medication, like I said, he said, when I'd run out, just come back. And I'd walk out with my brown bag. The day that everything happened, I had the kids on every weekend. I would pick up my little kids. I remember making them bowls of ice cream. They were sitting at the table. My wife called. She was coming to get them. And then she pulls up, and I went outside to talk to her. I don't know why that happened. I mean, I know that we were arguing. Her phone was ringing. Then it was like, that stopped. And the next thing I know, I remember going back in the apartment, and I seen the kids sitting there eating their ice cream, and I had blood on me. I remember washing my hands, trying to get it off of me, and I grabbed my phone and I reached out for help.
She's hurt real bad.
She's hurt?
Yeah.
Okay, how is she hurt?
She's cut.
She's cut?
Yeah.
Okay, did you cut her?
Yeah, I did.
You with a knife?
Yes.
Where did you cut her?
I don't even know. I just freaked out.
I don't know everything that happened. I can't picture it, and I've went over that every single day since it's happened to put every single piece of that together, and I can't put all of it together. There's no way around saying I didn't do it. There's no way around it. I would have died for that girl. I loved that girl. I wouldn't have done it if I wouldn't have been on medication. It would have never happened.
Ninguém pensava que Dale Bagshaw fosse capaz de assassinar a sua esposa Kelly. Muitos outros que cometeram assassínio enquanto tomavam drogas psiquiátricas também não pareciam ser capazes disso.
On the surface, 31-year-old Myron Sherwan may appear to be the guy we all want next door. College-educated, a licensed attorney, a faithful man.
The Brad Stone that I know was a caring guy. He would do anything for anybody.
Steve I knew, and he was anything but a monster. He was probably the nicest, most caring person ever.
He didn't seem like, the type that'd do what he did.
Probably wouldn't think that there's anything wrong or strange or different about him.
Was there ever any evidence that this could possibly happen from this individual? Absolutely not.
There is no way this kid could ever do anything like that.
I mean, he was just a regular guy.
From a nice kid to a killer, there are so many questions about how he may have gotten from one to the other.
It's a predictable consequence of our widespread use of these drugs that we would now be seeing dramatic rises in this kind of extreme violence.
People said, that's so bizarre. Why did that person do that? We never saw that coming, But the common denominator is mind-altering drugs that actually do that. They alter the mind in ways that cause people to do these things.
You can't bombard the brain with toxic amounts of chemicals, and that's what this is, and expect a positive outcome. That's just not going to happen.
Só nos Estados Unidos, entre 2004 e 2012, as drogas psiquiátricas causaram reações violentas numa estimativa de 1,4 milhões de casos. Esse é um ato de violência induzida por drogas a cada 3 minutos. Então a pergunta deve ser feita: quão seguros estamos numa sociedade onde centenas de milhões de pessoas estranhas estão sob a influência de drogas psiquiátricas e com o risco de rebentar a qualquer momento? Num piscar de olhos, as ações induzidas por drogas de um único indivíduo podem destruir não só uma vida, mas as vidas de muitas pessoas.
Breaking news, a plane crash in the Alps, shocking.
The 28-year-old German co-pilot, Andreas Lupitz, locks the cockpit door from inside, then noses down the jetliner heading to the ground.
All 150 on the flight from Barcelona to Dusseldorf were killed.
The Germanwings pilot crashed the airplane right into a mountain. The black box recording that was recovered picks up his breathing. And they said his breathing was even all the way to the moment of impact. That's a person on an antidepressant. Disconnected. It's inconceivable. You could see a mountain coming closer and closer to you, know you're going to die, and just be breathing evenly. Even if you were suicidal and wanted to die, you would be like, oh my God, as it approached. No. Just even breathing all the way till the point of impact. That's psychiatric drugs.
Os assassínios em massa cometidos por um único indivíduo foram em tempos considerados raros. Mas isso foi antes da era da medicação psiquiátrica generalizada. O primeiro dos sucessos de medicação foi Thorazina.
Thorazine, the first of the major tranquilizers.
Apresentado em 1954 para imobilizar pacientes mentais. Vendo o sucesso multimilionário da Thorazina nas instituições, os psiquiatras e as companhias farmacêuticas fizeram parceria para desenvolver e promover as drogas ao público em geral.
The so-called tranquilizer drugs have made a great contribution
to controlling of symptoms.
Na década de 1960, drogas como a Ritalina, Valium e Melaril estavam a ser amplamente comercializadas a donas de casa estressadas e executivos atarefados. Mas os riscos graves foram perdidos nas conversas de vendas. Até o dia, em agosto de 1966, quando um estudante da Universidade do Texas a tomar anfetaminas e barbitúricos subiu a uma torre de relógio do campus armado com uma espingarda. Mas muitos mais assassinos em massa sob drogas psiquiátricas se seguiriam. Em 1981, John Hinckley disparou contra o presidente Ronald Reagan e 3 outros depois de tomar Valium. William Cruz matou 6 pessoas, incluindo 2 polícias. Ele também estava a tomar drogas psiquiátricas. E o famoso assassino em série Jeffrey Dahmer matou 17 jovens enquanto tomava tranquilizantes e antidepressivos. O número de mortes por assassínio em massa teve um salto significativo em 1988, no mesmo ano que o lançamento influente do primeiro antidepressivo ISRS.
You've heard about the wonder drug Prozac? It was on the cover of Newsweek magazine.
No ano seguinte e menos de um mês depois de começar o Prozac, Joseph Westbecker entrou no seu antigo local de trabalho e matou 8 pessoas, depois a ele mesmo. Permanece até hoje o tiroteio em massa mais mortal na história de Kentucky. Antes do ataque, o próprio psiquiatra de Westbecker indicou o Prozac como a causa provável para o seu declínio. Mas a droga era demasiado lucrativa para a comunidade psiquiátrica e para o fabricante de Prozac, Eli Lilly, prestarem atenção. Em 1995, a droga estava a ganhar 1/4 da receita total da Lilly, 1,5 mil milhões de dólares por ano. E como os antidepressivos imitadores começaram a sair para desafiar o Prozac, começou a corrida para vender tantas drogas quanto possível.
Ask your doctor about Prestige.
Sem publicitar os efeitos secundários. Na década seguinte, houve uma estimativa de 3,9 milhões de eventos adversos atribuídos só ao Prozac. E estes incluíam violência de todas as descrições. Em 1991, os protestos públicos crescentes forçaram os psiquiatras na Food and Drug Administration dos Estados Unidos a realizar audiências sobre a violência e o suicídio causados pelas drogas psiquiátricas.
My name is Robin Schott. I entered therapy 1 year ago as a victim of rape. I stand before you today a victim of Prozac.
My husband and I had what would have been a minor disagreement, say 6 months before taking Prozac. I attacked him with a kitchen knife.
He got up at 9 o'clock in the morning, took a 12-inch butcher knife out of the kitchen drawer and stabbed himself violently in the abdomen.
He was a very passive man to begin with. He became highly hostile, very aggressive, ultimately committed a homicide and then a suicide.
The bottom line is, I was never suicidal before taking Prozac. I was obsessed with suicide while taking Prozac.
What would have happened if these children had seen their mother commit suicide? I was only put on it for weight loss. Weight loss!
Mas apesar destas histórias pessoais trágicas, os psiquiatras da FDA recusaram-se a acreditar nelas. O presidente do comitê usava um colete à prova de balas para anunciar as suas conclusões.
I do not find from the evidence today that there is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and/or the intensification of suicidality and/or other violent behaviors.
E assim, alimentado por um influxo massivo de campanhas nos mídia e dinheiro farmacêutico, os psiquiatras continuaram a empurrar as suas drogas. Enquanto os assassínios em massa induzidos pelas drogas continuam a aparecer nas manchetes por toda a América, de costa a costa e internacionalmente.
Every time there's another one of these mass killings in the news, the first thing I want to know is what drug the person was taking.
A lot of these mass shootings is they were under some sort of mental health treatment. And once people get into the mental health treatment area, they're given drugs.
The violence that we see in these mass shootings, without question, is driven by these drugs and the effect they have on people.
16 dos 20 tiroteios em massa mais fatais na história moderna ocorreram nas últimas 2 décadas. De acordo com o Procurador-Geral dos Estados Unidos na altura, entre 2009 e 2013, o número de assassínios em massa triplicou. Só em 2020, os tiroteios em massa subiram 46%. E na América, no ano de 2023, houve uma média de quase 2 assassínios em massa por dia. E suportando o impacto desta violência descontrolada, o mais confiante e vulnerável de todos nós. As nossas escolas devem fornecer educação às crianças. Mas, vez após vez, estas tornaram-se os campos de matança de pessoas que eram enlouquecidas pelas drogas psiquiátricas.
Jefferson County 911. Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He has shot out a window. We need to...
This is Westside Middle School. We have several children down. We need more than one ambulance. And we get
He just came in through the side door and started shooting everybody. It was one table that was the closest to the door was Winfield just shot.
I got a text message from my daughter. It said there was a shooting.
There is a shooting at Success Tech Academy, and my son is trapped in one of the back rooms.
A guy kicks the stage door open, doesn't say a word, and just starts shooting at us.
I just wanted my kids and me to live. Like, that's all. I'm not a hero.
And because of that teacher, my child's alive.
I can't believe how close this is to home, you know. You never imagined it would happen at your school.
The last 2 hours have been the worst 2 hours of my life.
I kind of don't feel safe going to school, and sometimes at night I have nightmares too.
What kinds of medications was he on?
Just
you happen to know the names
Prozac
of the pills?
for depression. Prozac.
And he was taking this all the way until the other day.
Yep. Actually, they just recently upped his dosage.
Com o aumento da medicação psiquiátrica veio o aumento da violência escolar. Nos Estados Unidos, durante o ano escolar que terminou em 2021, houve pelo menos 93 incidentes com mortes, o mais alto em 2 décadas. E nas escolas de hoje, a prevenção da violência é a prioridade número 1. Ao prover as linhas da frente, especialistas em segurança escolar como Alan Banks sabem o que é preciso para proteger as nossas crianças na escola.
Since this is the front entrance to the door, the main front access, we want to keep these doors secured at all times. My recommendation is to have someone install an auto locking mechanism. That way, on the door, when it closes, it automatically locks down and can only be opened from the inside.
I see.
So that's one feature.
97% das escolas públicas americanas controlaram o acesso ao edifício durante horas regulares.
The other thing is you have a lot of glass here as well. Now, a lot of schools now are implementing getting bullet resistance or what they call bulletproof glass to be able to withstand like a hard impact if someone's trying to gain entrance in addition to firearms. So this is another option, you know, to keep your facility a lot safer. Also, I recommend some cameras on the outside that can show who's wanting to gain entrance, as well as down here and having some of those cameras, installed there.
As câmaras de segurança são omnipresentes. 9 em cada 10 escolas públicas usam-nas para monitorizar a atividade nas instalações.
The most important aspect of all of what we're talking about is, of course, the security for the kids.
Of course.
Okay, so this is an access area with a long corridor here, and again, these doors you want to keep secured. Whenever this has to be open for any reason, there should always be someone there monitoring that unsecured access area.
Como medida de segurança adicional, 75% de todas as escolas públicas requerem que o corpo docente e o pessoal usem distintivos ou identificação com foto. Depois, aos sistemas de alarmes.
Active shooters will use the fire alarm and set that off because they know that it will draw a pool of people to an area where everyone is trying to exit. So you want to have a system such as the code system, which is a red, green, and yellow code, which law enforcement's familiar with, and that will let you know what type of situation is going on, and it differentiates between a fire alarm.
Como uma proteção final, 95% das escolas primárias às escolas secundárias participam em simulacros de tiroteio de algum tipo. E tudo isto para além de detectores de metal, verificação de cacifos, supervisão de corredores, barricadas em salas de aula e salas de segurança à prova de balas.
No matter what you put in place, if you're dealing out psychotropic, psychiatric drugs to an individual, it can produce what we have now with the active shooters today, and this is the real cause that we need to be aware of.
Todos os anos, só nos Estados Unidos, 2,7 mil milhões de dólares são gastos na segurança escolar. E, no entanto, ainda não resolveu o verdadeiro problema por detrás de tantos dos tiroteios mortais em escolas, tais como aquele que ocorreu na manhã de 14 de dezembro de 2012.
Connecticut State Police and SWAT teams are now responding to a school shooting at an elementary school in Newtown.
There are 27 victims, 20 children, 7 adults.
Among the dead, 20-year-old gunman Adam Lanza and his mother.
I mean, I know he was on medication.
Adam Lanza was under psychiatric care since he was a child. He went to the best psychiatric hospitals. He had the best care. And the outcome was what we saw. In the aftermath of these mass shootings, it is critical to start collecting the evidence. They were sealing everything. They were closing everything down. So we decided to do a petition to the people who lived in Newtown to get the mental health records released. We ended up getting over 300 signatures. But the authorities are taking the position that Adam Lanza has a right to privacy, but he is dead, and so are the people that he killed. So Able Child sued the chief medical examiner's office for the records, and we were denied.
Quando pressionado para uma transparência total, o adjunto do Procurador-Geral do Estado de Connecticut usou esta lógica para explicar como libertar os registros médicos de Adam Lanza era prejudicial para a comunidade.
It is harmful because then you can cause a lot of people to stop taking their medications, stop cooperating with their treating physicians, just because of the heinousness of what Adam Lanza did.
The Deputy Attorney General who said in the commission hearing, we can't tell the public what Adam Lanza was on because people will stop taking their medications. I mean, come on. Come on. Don't we have that right? Adam Lanza is a product of psychiatry, a product of Yale Child Study Center and of Dr. Paul Fox. I think psychiatry created a monster in this little innocent boy because he was innocent at one point in life, but he became a psychiatric monster. If he didn't receive the mental health treatment that he got, maybe Sandy Hook mass murder would have never happened.
Mas não terminou aí, porque os legisladores do estado tornaram as coisas muito, mas muito piores.
Having been up at the Capitol during Sandy Hook, I witnessed an agenda that was so off base. The legislation that was passed in the aftermath of Sandy Hook clearly is on the road to increasing more psychiatric drugs.
No final, os funcionários de Connecticut atribuíram a violência de Sandy Hook às armas de fogo, aumentaram o nível de tratamento psiquiátrico de crianças em idade escolar e nem olharam para trás. Mas, mais uma vez, as autoridades ignoraram o verdadeiro problema e voltou a aparecer, desta vez, numa cidade chamada Parkland.
And we are coming on the air at this hour with news of a school shooting.
Gunshots ring out in this South Florida high school. Emergency vehicles rushing to the scene, paramedics in a race to save the wounded.
He was just very focused. He was very focused on what he was doing.
It was one of the deadliest mass shootings that had occurred. But what nobody was talking about was the fact that that young man had been in the hands of the psychiatrists since he was a very young child, began his journey in the mental health system. And he had been labeled, he had been prescribed medications.
Dr. Negan, was he already taking medication when he came to you?
Yes, he was.
Do you remember what that was?
Yes, 2 medications, Focalin XR, 20 milligrams daily, and Risperdal 0.25 milligrams daily.
You added a medication at that visit, correct?
Clonidine.
Desde os 6 anos, a vida de Nicholas Cruz tinha sido passada nas mãos da psiquiatria. E apesar de centenas de horas de tratamento psiquiátrico, anos de sinais de aviso e 39 visitas da polícia em 7 anos, os profissionais da saúde mental continuavam a drogá-lo e os resultados eram previsíveis.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people.
O Nicholas Cruz não disparou contra 20 pessoas, disparou contra 34 pessoas. E a carnificina foi devastadora. Tal como Anthony Borges, um aluno de uma família de imigrantes venezuelanos, sabe em primeira mão.
I was in class. I remember the teacher, he was talking about the finals exams. When the alarm went off, everyone was confused because this is not normal. So I was thinking to go outside. I opened a little bit the door. When I see the gun, I closed the door and I was outside in the hallway. And that's the time when the shooting started. He shot me the first time in the left leg here. I closed my eyes and I just heard the gunshots, and it was horrible that day. And I was thinking about it like, am I gonna die? So I covered my dad. And then I say, I can not survive with this. And I said bye, like thank you for everything. And he was, no, don't leave me like that. Nicholas Cruz saw Anthony talking on the phone with me, and he decided to give it another shot to Anthony. He get one time in the back, another one under the arm, and 3 times in the left leg. I can see because I was losing too much blood and I started blind.
The doctor said, 5 shots. You realize that you almost lost your kid. You almost lost your son.
The first time I woke up, I see my mom. She was there with me. And I started seeing my body. It was all destroyed. It went almost 3 months in the hospital. He get 13 surgeries. He keep him back and forth almost every day.
Right now, we don't feel safe to keep our kids in the school. And we keep it here in the house and doing homeschool. And it's more safe for them because we don't feel comfortable to take them to school. I'm not gonna take the risk again.
Nenhuma criança deve arriscar a sua vida só para ter uma educação. No entanto, tal como em Sandy Hook, a legislatura da Flórida não visou as medicações psiquiátricas que Cruz tomou, fez o contrário, colocando 69 milhões de dólares adicionais para a saúde mental dos alunos. Este mesmo erro está a ser cometido a nível nacional. No seu orçamento para 2024, a Casa Branca ultrapassou os gastos de saúde mental da Flórida em mais de 8 vezes, para mais de 500 milhões de dólares. Apesar de todo este tratamento da saúde mental, as nossas escolas já não são os lugares mais seguros.
Kids growing up in this generation have this underlying anxiety and fear when they go out in public that none of us have ever experienced before.
That's not the kind of society I want to live in. It's not, I don't want to be in fear every day I send my child out the door to school.
It's not armed guards in schools. That's not going to stop the problem. It's the drugs that are being prescribed to our kids. That is what's killing our children. The drugs.
Por fim, o número de crianças e adolescentes em todo o mundo a tomar drogas psiquiátricas receitadas é de 20 milhões, 5 vezes o número anual de graduados da faculdade. E muitas crianças tomam estas drogas durante anos, décadas, até mesmo o resto das suas vidas. Mas o que é que acontece quando estas drogas voltam essa violência contra si mesmo? Onde quer que haja drogas psiquiátricas, há pessoas levadas a atos autodestrutivos.
This is 911. Who is this?
My sister's trying to kill herself. Stop trying to kill herself.
Where is your sister? What is she trying to do? Take pills?
For what?
Is she
No, my
trying to...
dad's home now. Hold on, tell me. She's trying to kill herself. No, you're not going to die. No, you're not going to die today. Oh, no. Oh, no.
A Michelle não morreu nesse dia, mas muitos dos que tomam drogas psiquiátricas morrem, e em números muito maiores do que aqueles que matam outros.
People often think of suicide as just a symptom of depression, but it's really violence against oneself. And when you're taking a drug that induces such agitation and delusional thinking, that's a reasonable response.
It is a known fact that psychiatric drugs do cause suicidal ideation. It is written as a side effect in pretty much every psychiatric medication. So it is a published fact and it's very well known to us as a pharmacist.
Tanto é assim que em 2004 os reguladores do governo dos Estados Unidos colocaram todos os antidepressivos com avisos de caixas pretas a advertirem fortemente contra pensamentos e ações suicidas em todos os menores de 25 anos. E estes avisos são impressos em todas as bulas.
Okay, so I'm reading from the package for Zoloft.
I'm reading from the Paxil insert.
I'm reading from the package insert of Infexor.
I am reading from the Lexapro package insert.
And here it goes. Clinical worsening and suicide risk.
Worsening of depression and suicidal ideation.
Suicidal thinking and behavior, suicidality in children, adolescents, and young adults.
The emergence of suicidality.
I've seen medications have adverse effects on people, like suicidal thoughts.
A lot of young people that I know that go to my daughter's school are on some different types of those things. And yes, suicide is something that I never heard of when I was a kid, and we hear of it, and the kids are dealing with it from their friends almost all the time now.
So I was friends with someone, she, over a, I want to say 6-month span, had made about 4 to 5 attempts on her life, and she had been on psychiatric drugs.
There's no amount of lives that are worth that risk.
O advogado Andy Vickery tem uma longa experiência pessoal com os efeitos adversos das drogas psiquiátricas. No tribunal, ele colocou psiquiatras e executivos das farmacêuticas sob juramento, onde são forçados a admitir o verdadeiro mal das suas drogas.
I was asking a representative of GlaxoSmithKline under oath in a deposition, after they finally acknowledged that, yeah, Paxil increases the risk. They don't call it Paxil in the UK, they call it paroxetine. Paroxetine increases the risk of suicidal thinking and behavior in children and adolescents. And so I said, well, Doc, tell me, what's the magnitude of the increase in risk?
Let's say there were a school, an ordinary school of 1,000 school children. How prevalent would this phenomenon of emergent suicidality on paroxetine be within that school? Of the order of a class size?
A class, an entire class of elementary students. Not one, not five, an entire class. We're talking about medication that could cause an entire class in a whole elementary school to kill themselves? That sounds like a pretty big risk to me.
A correlação histórica entre o consumo de drogas psiquiátricas e o suicídio não pode ser negada. De 1999 a 2018, a taxa de receitas de drogas psiquiátricas nos Estados Unidos aumentou quase 50%, enquanto a taxa de suicídio aumentou 1/3.
We have seen the biggest expansion in mental health treatment ever, and yet suicide keeps climbing.
My question is, well, suicides are going up. You've been there the whole time. How come you haven't handled it already? If this is so great, why are suicides going up? Crickets.
E as tragédias desnecessárias ligadas às drogas psiquiátricas são devastadoras. Ninguém sabe como esta situação é realmente má, porque os testes que revelariam a presença destas drogas raramente são realizados.
One of the things that I used to do was look at autopsy reports, and I see, I used to look at drug tests all the time, and that's just not something in my experience that's routinely tested for, and that's surprising. I think it should be.
It's pretty easy to check someone's blood to see what they've been taking. It's not that hard to find. And they do tissue samples too, so if they can't find it in the blood, it means it wasn't a current dosage. They can find it in the tissue samples. Science is pretty thorough now.
But because it's a prescription medication, it's not something that they look at, and it's not something that the public is aware of, or, police or coroners or other investigators are aware of.
The normal tox screen doesn't have the specific tests that are necessary to detect an SSRI drug. There's a special test, needs to be done by a lab that's certified to do that will tell us whether this drug is in their bloodstream or not. Almost every time we have tested, we have found, yes, lo and behold, the drug is there.
E os psiquiatras estão muito conscientes dos seus perigos. Os avisos que ligam as drogas psiquiátricas ao suicídio têm sido relatados em estudos oficiais desde que foram postas no mercado pela primeira vez. Mas quando ocorrem estes suicídios, os psiquiatras irão atribuir a culpa à doença mental da pessoa.
90% of people who attempt or commit suicide have a pre-existing mental illness.
Many people struggle with mental illness, and unfortunately suicide is a all too common outcome.
It's known that somewhere between 85 to 95% of people who die by suicide have been living with some type of psychiatric illness.
Between 90 and 95% of all suicides have a diagnosable psychiatric illness.
So it is the single commonest factor associated with completed suicide.
The psychiatrist is the invisible man. The most you're going to hear is, oh gosh, I wish he had come in to the office. I wish we'd have gotten to him sooner. You're never going to hear, oh, yep, that's me. My drugs. Doesn't happen.
What they end up doing time and time again is blaming the patient. Well, the patient was mentally ill. That's why the patient committed suicide.
If they can point the finger at somebody or something else, that's what they do. It's all about avoiding liability.
Os psiquiatras até se protegeram da culpa no seu manual de diagnóstico, onde listam o suicídio como um transtorno mental para estudo posterior. Mas como o advogado R. Brent Wisner descobriu, não podem explicar o suicídio de alguém que tomava uma droga psiquiátrica, que não estava deprimido e tinha tudo pelo qual viver. Como no caso de Stuart Dolan.
Stuart Dolan was a very successful attorney. He was the lead attorney for the entire mergers and acquisition group at Reed Smith, which is a law firm that has over 1,000 lawyers. He had some anxiety related to work. He had no history of depression or any of that. And he started generic Paxil. 6 days later, goes into his office, and he's in his office. He closes the door for about 10 minutes. And then he just suddenly gets up and walks out. He wanders around downtown Chicago in the middle of the year. There's a sweltering 90 degrees. And he finds himself standing on a platform at the subway station, a subway station he never took. He nervously paced back and forth in front of the subway platform. And then as the train pulled in, he just jumped in front of it. When they did his autopsy and investigated his body, he had paroxetine in his system, or Paxil. And there was nothing else in his system. He wasn't taking any other drugs. He didn't drink. And this is a guy who had no business committing suicide. He had the best years of his life ahead of him. It only took 6 days for the drug reaction to kick in and be so violent that he would commit suicide in that horrific way.
Stuart Dolan nunca soube que a droga que estava a tomar multiplica a probabilidade de comportamento suicida por 6 vezes. E isso é de acordo com os dados da pesquisa da companhia farmacêutica. O facto é que tornar-se um paciente psiquiátrico é muito perigoso. Um estudo recente revela que, em comparação com as pessoas que não recebem psiquiatria, aqueles que recebem tratamento psiquiátrico externo têm 8 vezes mais probabilidades de se matarem. Para aqueles que visitam uma sala de emergência psiquiátrica, essa taxa multiplica-se por quase 28. E se são admitidos num hospital psiquiátrico, este sobe por um fator de 44. Thomas Insel, na altura diretor do Instituto Nacional de Saúde Mental dos Estados Unidos e o psiquiatra de pesquisa de nível mais elevado da nação, admitiu prontamente a falta de resultado da psiquiatria.
There are 38,000 suicides each year in the United States. That means one about every 15 minutes. Third most common cause of death amongst people between the ages of 15 and 25. It's kind of an extraordinary story when you realize that this is twice as common as homicide, and actually more common as a source of death than traffic fatalities in this country. In a sense, this is a kind of confession for me. My job is to actually make sure that we make progress on all of these disorders. I work for the federal government. Actually, I work for you. You pay my salary. And maybe at this point, when you know what I do, or maybe what I've failed to do, you'll think that I probably ought to be fired. And I could certainly understand that. But what I want to suggest, and the reason I'm here, is to tell you that I think we're about to be in a very different world as we think about these illnesses.
Durante seu mandato como, nas suas palavras, o psiquiatra da nação, Insel supervisionou mais de 20 mil milhões de dólares em pesquisa, enquanto pela sua própria confissão as taxas de suicídio dispararam.
It's a very simple fact. If you take a drug that is going to make you suicidal, the likelihood of you committing suicide is going to increase dramatically.
All you have to do is look at the drug insert and see the warnings, and it's not hard to see what's happening here.
What's worse than the risk of suicidality? The person doesn't live anymore. I mean, it doesn't get more serious than that.
Todos os anos, o número de pessoas por todo o mundo que morrem por sua própria conta é quase o dobro do número enterrado no Cemitério Nacional de Arlington. Então, como é que estes pequenos comprimidos causam atos de violência tão vastos, aleatórios e imprevisíveis? Há muitas razões. Mas a primeira é uma reação adversa bem conhecida que é perturbadoramente comum. Uma que pode levar qualquer pessoa a atos repentinos e imprevisíveis de desespero, destruição e morte. Um dos indicadores da violência induzida por drogas psiquiátricas é que é repentina, ilógica e completamente fora do normal. E esta violência pode irromper em qualquer lugar e a qualquer momento.
Please no, please.
9 days ago, Clay Duke opened fire on the Panama City School Board.
That's when security guard Mike Jones burst into the room and exchanged gunfire with Duke, before Duke turned the gun on himself.
2 22-year-old men dead and a young man and woman badly injured. Sebastian Crean was stabbed to death. A young man from Dalkey who has been named locally as Shane Clancy was found dead in the back garden of the house.
We begin with breaking news. West Palm Beach police say Pamela Brooks killed her 10-year-old daughter, then took her own life.
The chief calling the murder-suicide ferocious. The big question now, why would a mother described by so many as loving and doting kill her child?
Pode ser difícil acreditar que um simples comprimido pode causar tanta morte e destruição selvagem e impulsiva. Mas indo a fundo na literatura científica e um efeito secundário notório das drogas psiquiátricas, bem conhecido por causar violência e suicídio, surge vez após vez. Uma condição severa e debilitante conhecida como acatisia.
Akathisia can be defined as restlessness, not being comfortable in your body.
You'll see people pacing. Sometimes you'll see them scratching. And they just can't settle down.
They're crawling out of their skin with an agitation, with like intense, uncomfortable agitation that they can't get rid of.
I just can't believe that a drug a psychiatrist gives you does this to you and you have no control over it.
I'm pacing back and forth.
My nervous system is just totally wigging out.
Os sinais exteriores de acatisia podem ser leves ou severos.
What did he call this? Akathisia.
Mas de qualquer forma, o tumulto interior é uma agonia.
Akathisia is internal torment. It's physical and emotional torment. You can't get away from it. It's 24/7. It's like hell.
It's very clear in the literature and through the clinical trials that the drugs can cause akathisia. It's also very clear that akathisia causes violence and suicidality.
Ninguém, nem os psiquiatras, nem os farmacêuticos, nem os químicos de pesquisa, sabem exatamente como é que as drogas psiquiátricas causam acatisia. Eles simplesmente sabem que o fazem.
If you read some of these case studies about people who are under these drugs, it's a torture that I would wish on nobody.
The akathisia, it won't kill you, it will make you want to kill yourself. It's the feeling of ants or fire or electricity coursing head to toe all over, right underneath the skin. Feeling like you have to move, maybe rocking, anything that's any movement, anything moving. Even if I sit, it hurts. The pain is so bad you can't see anything else. You can be surrounded by family, friends, anything, but it is so lonely and so. I feel so isolated. I have an extremely hard time being around people. You can't function. I can't work. I can't support my family. It's horrible. I just want to cry. But this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what akathisia can be, and what akathisia is. That's where suicidal thoughts come in. That's where all you want to do is die. Death is the welcome thought. You want death. That's the only relief. The only upside out of this is that if I end up going to hell, at least I'm prepared and I know what it feels like.
Embora os psiquiatras raramente avisem os pacientes que as suas drogas podem causar acatisia, o próprio Manual da Psiquiatria das chamadas perturbações mentais lista as drogas psiquiátricas receitadas como uma causa.
Akathisia is a very real thing, an actual tangible result of these drugs. That is most likely and very probably the cause behind what we're looking at with regards to suicide rates and violence rates in our communities.
O executivo de vendas de 37 anos, Woody Witzak, é um exemplo demasiado típico. Ele e a sua esposa, Kim, tinham um casamento feliz durante quase 10 anos, quando a sua vida mudou para sempre com uma única receita.
Woody got an antidepressant for insomnia because he had just started a dream job with a startup company and was having trouble sleeping. He got Zoloft with no cautionary warning about what to look for. He had, night sweats. He didn't sleep, so his insomnia got worse. He had horrific nightmares that he was afraid he was going to hurt me. One night, when I got back from work, came in drenched through his work shirt, and he was on the kitchen floor in a fetal position with his hands around his head. Kim, you gotta help me. I don't know what's happened to me. It's like my head's outside my body looking in. Kim, you gotta help me. And I have never seen that behavior out of Woody in all of our time together. He kept talking about he couldn't sit still. He wasn't on anything else. The only thing in his system was Zoloft. Woody lasted one more week and then he was gone. Woody didn't have any history of mental health problems. So here was a guy who loved life, starting his dream job with a startup company, and 5 weeks later hangs himself?
Mas décadas antes, os pesquisadores da Pfizer já sabiam que Zoloft desencadeava pensamentos suicidas, um facto de que Kim e Woody nunca foram informados. Mas a triste história de Woody Witzak é apenas uma de muitas. Até uma em cada 4 pessoas que tomam antidepressivos vai experimentar o inferno vivo da acatisia. Para aqueles que estão noutra classe de drogas psiquiátricas, os antipsicóticos, essa taxa pode aumentar até 75%. A resposta óbvia é sair das drogas psiquiátricas o mais rapidamente possível. Mas aí está a armadilha, porque deixar as drogas pode ser tão perigoso para todos. As drogas psiquiátricas não só causam impulsos violentos quando as pessoas estão nelas, como também podem criar uma psicose assassina quando eles tentam desistir e entram no estado angustiante de abstinência.
315 and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters.
James Holmes opened fire in a crowded theater near Denver. 12 people were killed and 70 others wounded.
The guy's just standing right by the exit, just firing away.
And it's unthinkable, it's happened again. A shooting at a college, Seattle Pacific University in Washington State.
The man accused of killing one student and wounding 3 others planned to kill as many people as possible before turning the gun on himself.
Tragedy in Maine. That urgent manhunt continues for the accused gunman who has killed at least 18 people and left 13 others injured.
Police found the body of 40-year-old Robert Card, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
According to records from the county sheriff, in July he spent 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility.
Estes assassínios em massa foram cometidos por pessoas a retirar-se das drogas psiquiátricas, pessoas num estado de dependência química.
These drugs are powerful, and our brains and entire bodies adapt to them, and often people experience very serious psychiatric symptoms when they're withdrawing.
Any of the psychiatric drugs, when you come off of it, you have a withdrawal syndrome. that occurs. And actually, that's one of the riskier times also for violence, suicide or violence towards self or others.
They can often become violent, they can become suicidal, they can actually become a harm to themselves. It's something that nobody wants to address, and so it's never been addressed before.
Mas embora estudos após estudos mostrem que as drogas psiquiátricas podem causar problemas de retirada muito graves, os psiquiatras induzem o público em erro ao negar que as suas drogas são viciantes.
Today I'm answering the question, are antidepressants addictive? That answer is no.
Are antidepressants addictive? The short answer for you is going to be no.
Antidepressants are not addictive.
Antidepressants, they're not known to become monsters.
They're generally considered as non-addictive. Antidepressants are not addictive.
Thanks for watching.
As it's experienced and as it plays out in real life, it's addictive. You can't get off of it. Like, talk to how many people, if you asked them, have you ever wanted to come off your antidepressant? Everybody would say, well, yeah, I don't want to be taking this for the rest of my life. But they don't feel like they can get off it.
All the psychostimulants are very similar to cocaine. In fact, drug addicts can't tell the difference between the two. These drugs are really powerfully addictive.
Stimulant drugs are addictive. The benzodiazepines, the anxiolytics, those are very addictive.
Just the fact that the body's withdrawing from the SSRIs, if too abruptly taken away, proves that actually there is a physiologic and mental addiction to the SSRIs.
Mas os psiquiatras evitam isto dizendo deliberadamente aos pacientes que o vício e a dependência não ocorrem com drogas psiquiátricas. Em vez disso, afirmam que aquilo de que estão a sofrer é uma nova condição mental, síndrome de descontinuação.
How they distinguish withdrawal and addiction from discontinuation syndrome is a matter of sophistry. It's wordplay. They claim that these drugs are not addictive, but they do admit that they actually cause what they call discontinuation syndrome, which looks exactly like withdrawals from an addictive medication.
Mas se souber as perguntas certas e perguntar da forma certa, os psiquiatras irão admitir que a retirada das drogas psiquiátricas é real e repleta de perigo.
There are some medicines where there's withdrawal, and it's got to be, you can't suddenly stop the medicine.
Withdrawal is common.
There are a wide variety of side effects that you can get as withdrawal effects.
Heart palpitations, agitation, profuse sweating, headache, dizziness, blurred vision.
Inability to think, tremulousness, difficulty thinking, sweating, all kinds of things.
There's some medications that have known withdrawal side effects that are medical emergencies.
Such as?
Seizures.
They can become depressed and they can be dangerous to themselves.
A solução deles: convencer o paciente a voltar à droga.
Many people who think they're having withdrawal symptoms with the medication are actually just seeing the depression and anxiety come back.
Sometimes when patients stop taking antidepressants, they start feeling depressed again. Actually, this might be an indication that the medication was working very well.
The biggest danger associated with it is a risk of having a recurrence of depression if you do discontinue treatment.
We're taught that's, if you get them off of it and they get worse, then they obviously needed to be on it.
So they're having an effect from getting off of a drug and they lose it. And that becomes the evidence that they're so sick that they need to stay on the drug.
The system is getting people to become dependent on the system, to go back and become addicted to medications, come back for more medications over and over again.
E muitas drogas psiquiátricas estão entre as mais viciantes na Terra. Tome, por exemplo, os estimulantes como Ritalina, Adderall e Concerta, que a Drug Enforcement Administration dos Estados Unidos colocou na mesma lista de risco que outras substâncias altamente viciantes, tais como ópio, morfina e Oxycontin. A dependência física de drogas como o Xanax e Ativan pode ocorrer dentro de dias. E os sintomas de abstinência podem começar numa questão de horas. Os sintomas de abstinência dos antidepressivos afligem tanto como 4 em cada 5 consumidores, um potencial de 85 milhões de pessoas. Isso é mais do que as populações de Nova York, Hong Kong Tóquio, Madrid, Sydney, Paris, Los Angeles e Berlim, combinadas. E a duração média do processo de abstinência? Quase 2 anos por droga. E o segredo mais sujo de todos é que os mesmos psiquiatras que põem os seus pacientes em drogas psiquiátricas raramente sabem como tirá-los, o que deixa muitos num colete de forças de vício e dependência sem nenhuma saída. Como no caso trágico de Richard Fee, de 25 anos.
Richard was your normal, everyday, active little boy. I mean, he participated in a lot of the sports, of course, baseball being his favorite.
And there's Richard in the dugout right there. Oh, there he is right there with the foul ball that he got.
Oh, he caught that?
Uh-huh. The teachers loved him, the students, he had a lot of friends, always got good grades. He was basically the all-American kid.
He actually ended up getting an academic scholarship to college, and he was able to play baseball there.
When I first found out that he actually was taking Adderall was when he came back home in the fall of 2009.
That's when we first noticed some changes in Richard. We weren't sure what it was. He wasn't the happy-go-lucky young man he had always been for 23 years.
He had delusional thinking, he wasn't sleeping at night, he had hallucinations.
So he didn't even have a cell phone anymore. He destroyed that because he thought people were spying on him through his phone and things like that.
It was scary, especially when things got to be physical and things got violent. We would go to bed at night and we would lock our door. I had to get it stopped. I had to do something. My main goal as Richard's father was his health, get him off the Adderall, because I knew everything that was going on was because of the Adderall.
We did not realize at first that he'd found another doctor here in Virginia Beach to get the medication, the Adderall.
Dr. Ellison, he pushed back by defending himself. Oh, I do this the right way, and this, that, and the other, and I'm the best ADHD doctor. And finally, I was at a point, I said, well, I tell you what, if you keep prescribing Adderall to my son, he's not going to be able to live in my house. So at that point, he said, all right, no more Adderall.
We never knew what the adverse reactions were leading to discontinuation of Adderall, based on the way the doctor just took him off of it.
I would be up a lot of nights with him 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because he's pacing the floors. Where's my Adderall? Jesus is looking all over for it. He's tearing stuff up.
He went back to Dr. Ellison, who hadn't seen him for 4 or 5 months, and gave him a 3-month prescription of Adderall after seeing him for 10 minutes.
I call Ellison up again. What the heck are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Are you seriously trying to kill my son? And that was the last conversation I had with Ellison. Ellison washed his hands of Richard. Wouldn't see him. Wouldn't talk to me. Didn't offer to help Richard.
So he just cut him off like that. Almost 4 weeks later, his prescription ran out. Late Monday night, I had texted him and I told him that I wanted to get with him the next morning. Never heard anything, and I told Ricky, I said, I just did not feel good. I said, let's go over there.
She's knocking on the door. No answer. Door's locked. His kitchen window's partially open, so I crawl through the kitchen window and I'm looking. It's a really small 1-bedroom. His car's out front. I see his keys, his wallet. I look through the whole apartment and I yell out to her, he's not here. So as I'm going to the front door to let Kathy in, I realize I missed one place I didn't look. And that was his closet. And that's where I found him. I found him in his closet.
So I came in and Ricky didn't want me to see him. But I had to because I couldn't believe what Ricky was telling me. Ricky yelled at me to call 911, but I mean, Richard was already passed away.
Embora quem consome psicotrópicos raramente sabe os verdadeiros perigos da violência e do suicídio, os psiquiatras e as companhias farmacêuticas sabem. E eles têm estado a guardar este segredo muito bem. 1985. A Agência Reguladora de Drogas da Alemanha rejeita Prozac por causa das altas taxas de suicídio. Mas o fabricante de Prozac, Eli Lilly, oculta parte-chave desta informação à FDA dos Estados Unidos e reduz os riscos de suicídio. Em 1987, a FDA aprova o Prozac para venda nos Estados Unidos e o mundo segue o exemplo. Em 1998, um diretor médico superior na Pfizer adverte num artigo revisto por colegas que todos os antidepressivos ISRS, incluindo a própria droga da Pfizer, Zoloft, podem causar acatisia. Isto, afirma ele, deixa alguns pacientes tão agitados que a morte é um resultado bem-vindo. Depois escreve um memorando a aconselhar a sua força de vendas a não mencionar isto aos médicos. E em 2001, um painel de psiquiatras estrela publica um estudo a elogiar a eficácia da paroxetina nas crianças. Mais tarde, os revisores descobriram comportamentos suicidas reclassificados sob rótulos como labilidade emocional, hostilidade e euforia. Os dados brutos de facto mostram que a paroxetina multiplica eventos suicidas em crianças por 9 vezes. O estudo nunca é retirado.
It is a cover-up, and what they're covering up is fraud and abuse in mental health. It's very simple. It's very simple.
Depois há a chamada teoria do desequilíbrio químico, formulada em 1965 e usada pelos psiquiatras desde então para convencer os pacientes a tomar as suas drogas. Em 2022, um estudo histórico finalmente expôs a teoria do desequilíbrio químico como uma fraude de décadas, uma ferramenta de marketing pseudocientífica inventada e promovida pelos psiquiatras e companhias farmacêuticas.
There is no evidence, no scientific evidence that people with mental health disorders have biological imbalances. There's zero evidence. So that's the only thing that supports medication. Why would you give a medication to somebody if they don't have something physically that this thing is going to solve? It makes there's no science behind psychiatry.
Mas os influenciadores da psiquiatria mudaram rapidamente.
So this paper concludes by saying there is no evidence for the oversimplistic chemical imbalance hypothesis of depression. We know. We knew that before this paper came out. This paper changes nothing.
Durante anos, os psiquiatras usaram esta mentira
to an imbalance of naturally occurring chemicals between nerve cells in the brain.
Para levar as pessoas a tomar drogas psiquiátricas fortes. E muitas vezes com consequências graves. Porque, na realidade, ninguém conhece o mecanismo de ação das drogas psiquiátricas, ou seja, como agem fisicamente sobre o corpo humano.
Any medication other than psychiatric medications, most of the times the mechanism of action is very well known. And with the psychiatric medication, it's the opposite.
Okay, in the package insert for Pamelor, which is nortriptyline under clinical pharmacology, it says the mechanism of mood elevation by antidepressants is at present unknown.
The exact mechanism of Prozac is unknown.
The exact mechanism of action of Wellbutrin is not known.
The mechanism of antidepressant action is presumed to be, meaning they don't know it is, it's a presumption.
There's no place for saying presumed to be. That's not science. It's just nothing should follow that. It should just be we don't know, period.
Mas o disfarce vai ainda mais longe. Os psiquiatras também têm sabido há décadas que as drogas nem sequer funcionam. O Dr. Irving Kirsch realizou vários estudos comparando antidepressivos com um comprimido falso de açúcar ou placebo.
The difference between the effect of a placebo and the effect of an antidepressant is minimal for most people.
So you're saying if they took a sugar pill, they'd have the same effect?
They'd have almost as large an effect, and whatever difference there would be clinically insignificant.
A diferença é que aqueles que recebem placebo, uma substância quimicamente inerte como o açúcar, não sofrem os efeitos secundários que vêm com uma droga que altera a mente, que acarreta riscos significativos.
We're treating people with very powerful chemicals, which very significantly alter their behavior, and there is absolutely zero evidence for it, and people aren't getting better.
So when you balance that against the risk, seems like the balance is pretty clear in that the benefits do not outweigh the risks for these particular drugs.
Sugar pills don't cause violence. Sugar pills don't cause mass murders or suicides. These drugs do. And so if they're no more effective than a sugar pill, then they should not be on the market. It's an unacceptable hazard to human health.
Conclusão: quando se trata das perigosas drogas psiquiátricas que eles pesquisam, promovem e atestam, os psiquiatras, os autodeclarados peritos, estão apenas a disparar às cegas. E os seus líderes sempre souberam isso.
We don't have any targeted treatments. We don't understand the biology. We're throwing things at the wall. We're hoping for the best. It's all trial and error. And all of our treatments have a lot of toxicity. It's us. One of the problems is that we have this sort of, I call it the soft bigotry of low expectations. We don't expect a cure. We're happy to just turn down the symptoms 30%. That's a success. That's a great billion-dollar drug. And we're thinking that's fantastic. Well, that's nonsense.
Esta farsa de ciência estende-se até aos níveis superiores do governo, onde os psiquiatras dominam os painéis consultivos da FDA que recomendam quais as drogas psiquiátricas que são suficientemente seguras para vender ao público. E se alguém sabe como os psiquiatras da FDA operam, é Kim Witzak.
Well, I like to actually call myself the accidental advocate because I never set out to do this work, drug safety work, but it was personal. So hence what originally started as a mission to get black box warnings put on the antidepressants, it quickly emerged more into overall drug safety with our drugs that are come on the market, working with the FDA, etc. I get to see clinical trials, I get to see what they're going to present to the FDA to get the drug approved. A lot of the members on our committee are psychiatrists by nature, or by training. Having a bunch of psychiatrists on there, of course I already know that they believe that the drugs are going to work. I just assume there's probably going to get approval. So that's a given in my mind that they're going to figure that out. But it's really about getting the drug on the market. Because once it's on the market, that's really where the real clinical trial begins. With the public. The public has no idea that they're really the real clinical trial because they've automatically assumed that it's already been tested.
Para compreender quão corrupto é o processo de aprovação de drogas psiquiátricas, considere a carreira do psiquiatra Thomas Laughren. Durante 27 anos, Laughren supervisou a aprovação de drogas psiquiátricas na FDA.
I actually had a chance to take the deposition of Thomas Laughren, who is, frankly, the godfather of modern psychiatric medications in our society. He has personally approved every SSRI and antipsychotic that's on the market today. Listening to the way he rationalized and explained away the rubber stamping of drug after drug after drug. And frankly, when I showed him the evidence, I believe he kind of admitted, yeah, I guess this really doesn't work. And he didn't care. He just didn't care.
Sob a guarda de Laughren, as drogas psiquiátricas aprovadas pela FDA causaram inúmeras tragédias, como aquela que aconteceu com a filha de 12 anos de Matthew Downing, Candace.
When Candace was in 7th grade, she started becoming really anxious about homework and about tests at school. And I was really concerned, so I took her to a child psychiatrist who, within the first 10 minutes, handed me a sample pack of Zoloft. There were absolutely no warnings on the sample pack he gave me. He explained no warnings. At one point, Candace started really scratching deeply on the inside of her arms, and I asked her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm itchy." What we didn't know at the time is that was a response to the akathisia she was feeling, that it was the pins and needles, the burning sensations under the skin that she was feeling, but as a 12-year-old couldn't identify, couldn't really tell me what was happening. I wasn't home when it happened. Candace was sitting on her father's lap with her sister. She was laughing. They were watching Animal Planet. She was just all curled up in his arms. So to come home, and my husband and daughter were both there, and I asked, "Where's Candace?" And they said, probably upstairs. And I went upstairs, and she was hanging from her bed. There was nothing to warn us that something like this could take place. Absolutely no warning. No warning to her, no warning to us. And this child did her homework for the following week, waiting to see the doctor the last time. She had no idea this was going to happen. Candace had a lot of plans. Dying was not one of them.
Na altura da morte de Candace, Thomas Laughren tinha estado na FDA durante quase 18 anos, supervisionando a aprovação de drogas psiquiátricas, incluindo a droga que Candace estava a tomar. Laughren era também um vizinho dos Downings nos subúrbios de Washington, D.C.
Tom Laughren was the father of two of my children's classmates. Our kids had started off as 2-year-olds in dance together and had gone from kindergarten through middle school together. He attended Candace's service. I think had he the knowledge of what had killed Candace, he wouldn't have dared shown his face.
Nesse outono, Mattie Downing assistiu a uma audiência da FDA, onde ela prestou depoimentos sobre a morte de Candace. Na assistência, o seu vizinho, Thomas Laughren.
How ironic, Dr. Laughren, that your family attended Candace's memorial service. Our daughters had been in class together since kindergarten. How devastating to us that your daughter will graduate from the school that they've both attended for the past 8 years, and that Candace will never have the opportunity to do so.
Following my testimony at the FDA, there was a press hearing. One of the reporters from ABC actually said, "Dr. Laughren, I'd like to talk to you about Candace Downing." And he put his hand over the lens and said, "Turn that thing off." And he had them removed from the press conference. But they fought back and said, "We have every right to be in this press conference." So they were allowed to return, but only if they didn't mention Candace's name.
8 anos mais tarde, na televisão nacional, Laughren admitiu relutantemente que o benefício esperado das drogas psiquiátricas ainda não se tinha materializado.
I think we all agree that the changes that you see in the short-term trials, the difference between improvement in drug and placebo is rather small.
It's a moderate difference.
It's a modest difference.
E quando Laughren finalmente se aposentou da FDA, ganhou uma pipa de massa. Sem nenhuns arrependimentos pelos danos que as suas decisões possam ter causado, ele é agora um consultor para companhias farmacêuticas.
I lost my daughter because a medication that was known to kill children was approved. How could you support the approval of a drug you knew was killing children? How could you be that callous to think that you're above the lives of children?
Os psiquiatras não são cegos ao dano que as suas drogas causam. E, no entanto, eles prescrevem a 86% de todas as visitas ao consultório. Mas porquê? Porquê é que continuam a empurrar estes químicos prejudiciais e que alteram a mente, que beneficiam tão poucos e prejudicam tantos? Em embora a medicação psiquiátrica seja destrutiva para os pacientes e ruinosa para a sociedade, para os psiquiatras e laboratórios farmacêuticos é um grande negócio.
There is a very clear synergy between psychiatrists and the pharmaceutical industry, and they both have a vested interest in prescribing as many drugs as possible to people for psychiatric conditions. Because if you can boil down all mental illness to a pill, then if you're a drug company, you'll make billions. And if you're a psychiatrist, you'll make millions.
Juntos, os psiquiatras e as companhias farmacêuticas comercializam drogas psiquiátricas para médicos convencionais e por todo o espectro médico. E alguns psiquiatras têm estado a ficar ricos. De acordo com os procuradores federais, Jeffrey Bostic embolsou $750 milhão da Forest Pharmaceuticals por dar discursos aos médicos, muitos promovendo os antidepressivos Celexa e Lexapro. Bostic também visitou profissionais médicos para os encorajar a prescrever estas drogas às crianças, mesmo depois de a FDA ter colocado um aviso de caixa preta de suicídio para todos os menores de 25 anos.
We deposed several psychiatrists who were paid by pharmaceutical companies to go on these road shows and tell doctors and psychiatrists and pediatric physicians, hey, Celexa and Lexapro are really effective in treating pediatric depression. And we showed them that they knew the drug didn't work, and they knew that it could cause pediatric suicidality. And he just didn't care. That's sort of my view on it. His name was Jeff Bostic. Is a person who I think is so corrupt to his core that the fact that parents are trusting him to treat their children sickens me.
Em 2010, a Forest declarou-se culpada da promoção ilegal de drogas psiquiátricas pelo uso não aprovado em crianças e pagou mais de $300 milhões em multas e confiscos. No entanto, Bostic pegou no seu dinheiro e escapou sem punição. Em 2018, ele publicou um documento de pesquisa a aconselhar as escolas como os alvos para a intervenção psiquiátrica. Porquê escolas? Porque, escreveu Bostic, parafraseando um famoso ladrão de bancos, é aí que os miúdos estão. Isto foi 6 anos depois da matança em massa de 20 crianças de 6 e 7 anos na Sandy Hook Elementary.
After Sandy Hook happened, there were droves of special interest counselors that descended on Sandy Hook. A lot of people were given different financial benefits to open up counseling centers. After each mass shooting, huge amounts of money flood in.
It really is unbelievable that they keep getting away with this, saying we're the experts and go on TV and when there's a shooting or say like, or go and ask, make pleas for more money.
You have a whole industry that's poised to make money off of its own damage, right? It's not enough that we sell people damaging drugs. When they hurt other people, then we can use that as an opportunity to sell more damaging drugs.
Cada uma das 4 classes principais destas drogas psiquiátricas prejudiciais e indutoras de violência é uma grande mina de ouro. Benzodiazepinas tais como Xanax, Valium e Ativan.
In Dayton, early this morning, at least 9 people were killed and 27 injured before police officers shot the gunman to death just 30 seconds after the attack began.
Estimulantes incluindo Concerta, Vyvanse e Adderall.
If Adderall can change someone like Kyle, then it can probably change any young person.
Kyle Craig stepped in front of a train, ending his life.
Drogas antipsicóticas como Seroquel, Abilify e Zyprexa.
A horrific mass shooting unfolding in real time. 24-year-old David Katz opened fire, killing 2 people, injuring 11 others.
E antidepressivos como Lexapro, Wellbutrin, Effexor, Zoloft e Prozac.
It happened again, another deadly massacre at Fort Hood.
Lopez had been prescribed powerful antidepressants.
Psychiatry is not a humanitarian endeavor. It is a business.
Fundamental question is patient care a concern at all? Like, where does patient care fit into the business model itself?
The money put into the mental health system, the number of medications being used are all increasing, not decreasing, which leads me and anybody with common sense will realize that they're actually not fixing or curing anything.
What percentage of patients have you cured?
I don't know how to use that.
What percentage of patients have you cured?
I don't know what cured means.
Cured? I don't know. It's difficult to say you cured someone.
I haven't cured anybody.
I wish the science of psychiatry was such that we could always cure problems.
It's hard to say, right?
There's no such thing as a cure.
Cure is such an ambitious term.
I'd probably say 0, since medications aren't meant to cure.
You never cure psychiatric illness.
There's no cure. We control symptoms.
A cure would be like having a sinus infection where you take an antibiotic and after a while you don't need any more antibiotic and it's all gone and you're fine. Well, you don't get that with antidepressants. You don't get that with psychiatric meds.
Here's a simple fact. No psychiatric drug cures anything. Truth. Just basic truth. Here's another fact. Every psychiatric drug has the risk of serious effects that could be life devastating.
The psychiatrists are aware of the problems, and the reason why they're still prescribing them is that's all they have. They're only paid on medications.
I had a child psychiatrist tell me, Gretchen, I can guarantee you if a child comes to my office, he or she will leave with a prescription, because that's how I make my money.
E é negócio que pode destruir qualquer pessoa em qualquer altura. Tal como a filha adolescente de Christina Kaiser.
My daughter, Natalie, was always a very intelligent child, much more, I guess you could say, advanced than most of her peers. Natalie wasn't depressed, and nor did we take her to the doctor because we thought she was depressed. We only wanted to help her develop some social skills to deal with mild anxiety. And that is how I made the ultimately fatal decision to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist instructed my daughter to take what proved to be a fatal dose of Zoloft. Sadly, when Natalie started developing what we know were signs of toxicity, poisoning, the doctor increased the drug. I couldn't figure out when I said goodnight to her why she was shuffling and she was walking with a real wide stance. She had uncontrollable scratching and itching. She tried to write down some of her symptoms, and on her nightstand before she totally went delirious, she wrote, "I keep coughing up blood." She didn't make it another day. Natalie died of self-sustained injuries, but the psychiatrist is responsible for my daughter's poisoning, her suffering, and her death. The doctor's not in prison, and she's still prescribing probably the same, because what she was doing after Natalie's death is what professionals know in the medical field is called buff the records. So when we asked for Natalie's records, we went to the office and she gave us 1 or 2 records. And she said that her printer was broken. Now, about 2 weeks later, after I buried my child at 19, she called me on my phone and left me a voicemail. And it says, "Hi, I wanted to talk to you about what I can and can't give you of Natalie's medical records because they kinda sorta got destroyed in an office flood." She knew if she hadn't destroyed the records, she may not be lucratively prescribing today. I went to see her in her Fairfax County office, and I told her, I gave birth to my child, and you took her away, and we will forever be connected. And if anybody else came into my house and told my kid to take a fatal dose of a drug, and she went psychotic because of akathisia, and she jumped off our roof, they would be in prison.
Em média, os psiquiatras lucram mais de $250 milhão por ano. Eles fazem isso como parte de uma indústria psiquiátrica drogando mais de 280 milhões de pessoas por todo o mundo. E em qualquer momento, milhões delas poderiam estar seriamente a considerar matar-se a si mesmas ou aos outros.
There's still that trust in the system, or it'll never happen to our family. Oh, that just happens out there. But the reality is we're all at risk.
When you go out to dinner or you take a flight, do you know if your flight, your pilot is on psychiatric drugs? Do you know if your surgeon is on psychiatric drugs?
When you have 80 million people in this country on drugs that contain the side effects or have the side effects that these drugs have, what do you think the odds are? Well, they're pretty good.
No total e mundialmente, as drogas psiquiátricas geram quase $50 mil milhões por ano. E estas drogas psiquiátricas lubrificam as engrenagens de uma indústria psiquiátrica global, anualmente a depositar mais de $400 mil milhões. E o número de curas? 0. Com esta quantidade de dinheiro, poder e influência em jogo, e com o mundo a tornar-se mais perigoso a cada instante, o futuro da nossa sociedade pode parecer muito sombrio. Algo tem de ser feito. E, felizmente, não é tarde demais. Onde quer que os psiquiatras empurrem as suas drogas para o mercado global, a violência e o suicídio seguem-se inevitavelmente. Mas isto não tem de ser assim.
Times are changing, and I think the longer we go, and the more evidence we have, and the more stories we have that we get out there, I think people are coming to a stage now where they're more likely to understand and appreciate that drugs can have terrible effects on people.
Os efeitos violentos e suicidas destas drogas podem e devem ser relatados. Nos Estados Unidos, a FDA fornece um sistema de relatório chamado MedWatch.
Most consumers don't realize that if they have a side effect or, an effect of the drug, that they too can report to the FDA.
The MedWatch program is the only aftermarket net that catches some of these side effects. So I think that if you gathered the data correctly, then yes, the drugs would be off the market.
And I do see the fear of the general population in terms of, well, that's our solution. So we have no solution if you let go of that solution, but that solution isn't a solution. It's harmful.
When people say, hey, my friend, it helped them so much, and I have no question it helped them, but it wasn't the drug. It was the act of getting treatment that improved it. And when you show that to people, they go, oh. When you realize you're not trying to take away help, but you're trying to clarify risk, it changes the conversation.
E para afastar a procura do público por estas drogas perigosas, a educação é imperativa.
Tell people about these risks, tell people about these side effects, and tell them to stop using them. Tell them to get them off safely. Obviously, consult with your doctor, but get off these drugs. And if you do that, if you really stop the demand of it, then I think we can start fixing the supply side.
There's a lot of reform that needs to be taken place. A lot of reform. But in order to do the reform, you need to educate people.
The public has a right to be protected, right? And the only way they can be protected is to know.
Muitos já estão a usar as suas experiências para falar contra a medicação psiquiátrica nas suas comunidades.
Being willing to tell your story is really important, because I think that when you tell your story, you start connecting with others and you realize you're not alone.
I don't want other people to learn the hard way. So that's why I speak out. Since Natalie died, I've done many radio interviews. I have authored a course on akathisia that you can take to find out what the symptoms are.
As hard as this is to speak out, to do interviews like this, we strongly believe that people need to know what happened to Richard. They need to know how dangerous these drugs are.
And after we told Richard's story, all of the families that contacted us that had gone through the same thing or are still going through the same thing and asking us what to do.
I wish I'd had the knowledge that I have now, which is why I continue to speak out, because I can't save my own child, but I can't just stand by and watch people lose their children.
Esta mãe lutou pelos direitos dos estudantes num estado inteiro.
I went up to Hartford and I testified on making sure that schools wouldn't dismiss or kick out a child if they decided not to use medication. It got a lot of media attention across the country. It was the first bill of its kind. That law now protects all parents from being coerced into placing your child onto psychiatric drugs in order to attend school.
Em última análise, a responsabilidade pelos danos e morte infligidos pelas drogas psiquiátricas encontra-se com aqueles que escrevem as receitas.
When you are dealing with a person's physical and mental health, you have a responsibility. This is not a minor failure when the patient doesn't know that the drug that they have been prescribed can cause them to feel like they want to kill themselves or somebody else.
Bartenders are responsible when they give someone a mind-altering substance and they go off and hurt themselves or hurt someone else. They can be considered liable. But doctors who prescribe mind-altering drugs to patients, knowing that it can cause these kinds of side effects, should we consider them liable? I feel like maybe we should.
Podemos levar aqueles que estão por detrás da medicação psiquiátrica da sociedade à justiça. Mais de 40% dos psiquiatras dos Estados Unidos foram processados por negligência médica, quase 2/3 destes processos judiciais por maus resultados, erros de medicação ou morte culposa. Os psiquiatras agora precisam de ser totalmente responsabilizados pela violência que criam na sociedade.
When are we going to wake up and say, oh my God, we've been trusting the wrong person. Oh my God, the suicides, the mass killings, it's because of the psychiatrists. It's because of their treatment.
This is an epidemic. This is a problem in our society. And the fact is people are not looking at these drugs as being a possible cause.
I think we'd be better off not having these drugs on the market at all. Removing all of them.
People are suffering. They're really suffering. My clients, when they come to me, are suffering. And a lot of times it's because of psychiatry.
But how many people have to die and suffer before we shift this?
It's not going to change until somebody says, that's it. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to be a party to murder.
There's no doubt in my mind that if society knew what is being withheld from them, game over. Game over.
O impacto destrutivo das drogas psiquiátricas não pode ser subestimado. Está na altura de livrar o nosso mundo da violência devastadora que eles causam e criar uma civilização mais segura na qual todos possamos viver. Junte-se à Comissão dos Cidadãos para os Direitos Humanos na luta contra o flagelo das drogas psiquiátricas que são prejudiciais para o consumidor e perigosas para todos. Se você ou alguém que conhece foi prejudicado por drogas psiquiátricas ou se quer fazer algo acerca disso, entre em ação, fale e contacte a Comissão dos Cidadãos para os Direitos Humanos.